Hey guys, Kyle, the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for Fire Force Episode 20. Okay, so first off, I have to talk a bit about that. I really want to talk about that hostage situation in the beginning of the episode, because on the surface, it's of course a really cool scene with Shinra just taking out that white-clad guy in an instant, but if you think about it a little more, the fact that Shinra actually even did manage to, save Licht as quick as he did is actually a very clear indicator as to how much his training actually paid off. Because if the Shinra who was in this situation was the one before all the training with Benimaru, he might have not only struggled a lot more in order to save Licht, but he could have very easily harmed him in the attempt as well, because only because of Shinra's less only because of Shinra's less only because Shinra had less control back then. But because of his training with Benimaru, it's given him both power and better precision with his fire. So now, in a sense, what you could say is he has become that Shinra with his training has become a better hero, in the sense where with this better precision of his abilities, he can save people, and he can save people and be the hero he wants to be. Too bad the only thing he still fucking sucks at is naming his techniques. Like, seriously, what? Yeah, Shinra, I like you, dude, but you really gotta work on those names, dude. Like, wow. even even Luffy and every other shonen protagonist I know has come up with better attack names than you, dude. Like, wow. Yeah. But I suppose that is part of the lovable idiot part of his character that makes him enjoyable to watch. And but then, like I said, it was just like I said, with him saving Licht, with him saving Licht the way he did in this episode, it's like the first clear sign that he is genuinely moving forward with his goal of becoming a hero. So a little bit of subtle development on that one, if you think about it. Um, and yeah, the episode's focus this week, or at least a good chunk of it, was pretty much Hinoa engaging in a life or death sniper match with Arrow. And just like last week with pretty much Tamaki and Maki, this once again was a good showcase of just how strong Hinoa actually is, and it gave spotlight to a character that I'm not gonna say has been on the back burner as much as Maki and Tamaki have, but it did remind us that, yeah, he basically is just as strong as Shinra and Arthur, and he can hold his own with the best of them. But more importantly, one thing I feel this episode showcased of Hinoa in particular is that it shows it shows that how, even under the most stressful circumstances, he can still think ahead of them. He can still think on his feet, and of the most strategic means and methods, by which to defeat his opponent, and never loses his focus. If anything, this episode pointed out that the more stressful the situation is, the more stressful the situation is for him. The pretty much accurate his critical and thinking and accuracy with a weapon becomes. Now, what he was doing in itself obviously was still reckless and dangerous, mind you, but it's one of those things where you can still get the sense that every move he's making is, even under the most stressful and dire circumstances, is still calculated. Calculated down to is still calculated down to the last letter, and you get this feeling that and you still understand that despite how basically life-threatening the situation is, it still is. He still knows what he's doing. Um, and obviously one of the big things, obviously just based off the episode title, was basically his pride. Like, it was showing how it was showing the difference between between what makes him different from the White Clad, and how despite everything, and how meticulous he is with like rules and regulations he was perceived to be, he still very much is someone who, when the chips are down, and when things get dirty in the trenches, you can pretty much count on him. You can count on him. You can count on him in order to have your back. And again, just pretty much just seeing what we see in this with how he was fighting under just the most extreme of under the most extreme conditions against Arrow. It just kind of proved that in itself. And now in terms of judging how the actual how the choreography and whatnot of the actual fight, I suppose you could say that there wasn't a whole lot of there was some movement, but a lot of the art and animation was of course directed towards a lot more towards the pretty much attacks, towards much the attacks that Arrow and Hino were dishing out on each other, and but one thing in particular, that this fight really got right, I found, is that you definitely get the sense of genuine danger, and how each time the fight itself escalated to a new level in some way, you pretty much feel that you basically get that tense, heart-pounding feeling that one wrong move on either Arrow or Hino's part could could have been their last. It's almost like one of those. It was almost like a more intense version. Like the way this whole battle between Hino and Arrow was set up, it was almost like a more intense version of a classical Western standoff, but with basically higher caliber weapons, I suppose. And but yeah, it was like I definitely liked how each time it escalated, it kind of. You definitely get the sense that each move they made was very much calculated, and how if they made one wrong move, they were done. In this case, obviously it was Hino who came on top in the end, but just the fact that they managed to give us that sense of intensity, that they managed to capture that sense of intensity. It really was amazing, honestly. Now. The thing with this, and I've said this before, but the episode once again also makes no qualms in showing us the kind of blind dedication that the White Clad pretty much have to their cause, and in some ways the fact that they are so dedicated to this cause is commendable. But at the same time, I think I said this before in no uncertain terms, but when you really boil down to it, what the White Clad are doing is basically, and what we're seeing them do is the purest depiction of religious fundamentalism, and believing in the rules, laws, and orders of a supreme being, of a supreme religious being. In this case, it's basically the Angelist, and Angelist, they're basically following supposedly every order he gives without question. So, and the thing is, when it came to the thing is, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily blind to it, but I wasn't blind to this before, even when reading the manga, but it really is one of those eye-opening moments for me where it's kind of scaring me how it isn't until recently and really kind of watching this in anime format, that I'm suddenly really cluing into Okubo's less than subtle depiction of that topic of how religion can pretty much blind one's logical, rational thinking, and just how in this case how in your face it actually is. I mean, again, I'm not going to pretend it wasn't there to begin with, but it was it wasn't something it, but it was something I kind of overlooked in favor of in favor of basically just kind of reading Fire Force in just kind of reading Fire Force as a new series to read in place of Soul Eater. But yeah, just like it's one of those things where, or just revisiting this now, it makes me realize, holy shit, this is a lot of this is something I completely missed. This completely flew over my head a little bit when I was reading it. Like I was just definitely I was one of the more casual readers. Let's put it that way. But yeah, and and of course the episode ends with the reunion between Vulcan and Lisa. And on top of the fact that we get shown clear as day how much of a mental grip that Prince Giovanni actually has on Lisa. Like, seriously, I've read the manga, and obviously it was toned down to a degree, but those scenes of the depiction of Giovanna, like having those depictions of Giovanna's like presence having this mental grip on Lisa's mind, those scenes were actually pretty fucking scary. So I gotta give props to David Production for the imagery on that. It still wasn't as creepy, it still wasn't as overblown as what was in the manga, but it was pretty on par too. Like, holy crap, they actually pulled that stuff off pretty well. Um, but on top of seeing the mental grip that Giovanna still has on Lisa, which shows that there is hope in order to get her back. We also get supposedly the biggest bomb drop that whoever the evangelist is, he's supposedly the one who knows who knows everything, like of how this whole world and its problems with human combustion were created. So this does give us a clear end goal now, but this also raises a bit of a new question of how much what from Giovanni actually says can be trusted, if at all, because again, it is kind of that situation where it is a very like with the White Cloud, they are a very religious group, so very religious heavy group, so to speak. So how much of this is actual factual, and how much is just them being how much is there just blind loyalty to it? It isn't, but it does give us an end goal either way in order to really kind of dig deep into what this is about. Now, you'll notice I have kind of gone this review without talking about the adaptation, and that's because, honestly, there's not much to talk about on that front this time around. This is another case of David Productions like pretty much streamlining it, but also changing very little. And what they do change, if at all, doesn't really matter too much in the grand scheme of things. It isn't like the whole thing with they're getting a little better at that on that in the sense where it isn't, they're not doing as much of like what they did with like Show and what they did with the introduction of Show and whatnot. So yeah. And the only other thing to mention in this episode, I'd say, is Arthur's like big moment of basically facing down facing down those French guys who facing down Mirage, and showing how much he's improved from his training as well, right alongside Shinra. But so yeah, it was just like an epic. It was an epic sword fight, and seeing his skills on display and whatnot, and how much he learned from basically his training with Benimaru. But one thing I think I'm kind of remembering now from this episode, and specifically Arthur's moment, is that this is actually at the point where I think what from Jacob, or basically Okubo started to really kind of tone down on Arthur's goofiness somewhat, and more on making him in and taking him in a direction where we can take him more seriously, I suppose. I mean, I'm not going to say that Arthur couldn't be taken seriously before, but his goofiness always kind of overshadowed his the more like the moments that showed progress with him. So it's one of those things where I think from here on out we're still going to get the goofiness of him, but it's not going to be as in your face, and the genuine moments with him are going to take a little bit more center stage, whereas the comedy with him is going to take a little bit more of a backseat. I think that's what I remember, I think, but yeah. But yeah, guys, that's my review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and a list of Crunchyroll. Death Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.